Welcome, and welcome to all of our guests as well. On behalf of the Pro Football Hall of Fame and the Board of Directors of the Pro Football Hall of Fame Luncheon Club, I call to order the 5th meeting of the 61st year of the Pro Football Hall of Fame Luncheon Club. Invocation today, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, will be given by our club treasurer and deacon at Martindale Christian Fellowship, Tim Richard. Tim?
Let us pray. Precious Heavenly Father, we just thank you for the opportunity to meet at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, to have the chance to meet many of the football players that are inducted into this Hall of Fame, dear Lord. We ask your blessings upon the LeBeau family who made the journey to Canton to speak with us. And we thank all of those members and guests that have come to enjoy. We ask your blessings over the food that we are partaking or have partaken. Bless the hands that prepared us and give us a great, awesome time with Dick LeBeau. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, great weekend of football. Buckeyes are big winners on Saturday. And, they are still on top of the Big Ten at this point. They obviously have a lot of work to do for those of you that watched the game. Started a little sluggish, but they came back and did very well. So congratulations to them. Fellow Buckeyes here in the house as well. Obviously, Coach LeBeau, one of those. Want to mention there were no deaths or illnesses that were brought to my attention, which is good news. I want to introduce some of the guests here today. You met Tim Richard, our treasurer, who offered the prayer today. Thank you, Tim. At the head table here, to the far right, is my lovely wife, Chris. Welcome her. Next to her, Katie Heastan, who is with the Pro Football Hall of Fame. She will be introducing Dick LeBeau. And the wife of Dick LeBeau, Nancy, please welcome. And obviously our speaker, Dick LeBeau, which you will hear from here in a minute. And Tim does have a death.
I just wanted to announce that longtime member Tom Greaves passed away this past week. He's a member, been a longtime member of the Hall of Fame. He's an avid golfer, and his services are today. So just remember him and his family in prayer, please. That was Tom Greaves, and his family is the Manco family. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Tim. I want to recognize our sponsors. You can see them. They've been on the board here, and they probably will pop up here in a little bit. Dr. Peter Ferguson, the Marion Motley Memorial Fund Scholarship, the Allcare Primetime Health Plan, Wilkshire Golf Course, and Liberty Ford. Next week, we will be back at Tozzi's on 12th. Continue our meetings. The dates for November, there has been a change. We will be at the Hall of Fame on November 20th instead of the 13th, so make sure you mark your calendars. Don Hertler Jr. will be the speaker on the 13th, and we will have a Hall of Famer on the 20th here at the Nash Event Center. The date will be incorrect on the tickets, but we will honor those just as well. We'll start selling tickets to that event 2 weeks prior, and that'll be on November 6th, so you can pick up your tickets starting November 6th. And remember, tickets are needed to get in the door here at the Nash Event Center. Don't forget to stop by the Hall of Fame gift shop. If you want to afterwards, you'll take advantage of that 25% discount that we get as club members. So make sure you do that if you'd like. And when we have questions after Dick LeBeau speaks today, there's a couple staff members here from the hall. They will bring a microphone to you. That way everyone can hear the question. And so please just raise your hand and they will bring the microphone to you. All right, it's time for the drawing, the raffle today. $247. And see Ozzy for your money. Make one friend today.
You ready?
Okay, our ticket number 389008. Sam. Congratulations, Sam. Knowing Sam, will take a cruise with that. All right, next week, our speaker will be Mike Doss, former Canton-McKinley standout, Ohio State Buckeye, and an Indianapolis Colt. And Mike was a state champion, a national champion, and a Super Bowl champion, all in one. So, looking forward to hearing Mike Doss speak. And now to introduce our speaker. She is the Hall of Fame Relations Outreach Coordinator here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And I want to say something on a personal note about Katie. We worked with her during the Hall of Fame enshrinement events, and her and the staff that she's with does a fantastic job. And we're happy to have her here in Canton, here at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So please welcome Katie Eastham.
Good afternoon, everybody. So it is my privilege to introduce our guest of honor today, who, after attending The Ohio State University, was drafted by the Cleveland Browns in the 5th round, but soon cut during training camp, which was a big mistake by the Browns. Later that year, he signed on with the Lions as a defensive back and started a string of 12 straight seasons with 3 or more interceptions. He was then voted to 3 consecutive bowls and named All NFL Second Team 4 times. Overall, in his 14 seasons with the Lions, he recorded 62 career interceptions, making him tied for 10th in NFL history for interceptions, 3 of which were returned for touchdowns. That's pretty impressive. So after his Hall of Fame worthy career as a player, he then transitioned to be a Hall of Fame worthy coach for 45 years, for a total of 59 consecutive seasons in the NFL. His coaching career consisted of the Eagles, Packers, Bengals, Bills, Titans, and my personal favorite, the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's credited with developing the zone blitz defense, which led him to 6 Super Bowl appearances, 4 of which were with the Steelers. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud to introduce you to one of the greatest defensive coordinators of all time, the most down-to-earth man I've ever met, and a fantastic golfer, even though he's too humble to say how good he really is. Accompanied by his amazing wife, Nancy, please welcome member of the class of 2010, Pro Football Hall of Famer Dick LeBeau.
I
Usually it's a lengthy banquet, and some of the people, like what you're going to hear from in upcoming weeks, will have spoken, and they'll say, next speaker is Dick LeBeau. And one guy will turn to his partner and say, it's a good time to go to the bathroom. And they all let me start by saying I'm honored to be here. That's my speech, so I'd rather answer your questions, be talking about something at least one of you wants to hear. I want to open by thanking my wife, helping me get here. This is all part of being in the Hall of Fame. And it is an honor, and I don't think you ever dare to think that someday you might be in there. I know I certainly didn't. And when it happened, well, I still can't believe it's true. And that's been 13 years ago now. So I'm an Ohio guy. From the tip of my head to the tip of my toes. I'm an Ohio State guy. When I was growing up, it was only the Cleveland Browns. Oh, I was unbelievably happy when they drafted me. They were the first people in my life that ever said, "We don't want you." But they weren't the last. But I coached for the Cincinnati Bengals for 18 years. And that was my longest stint any place. I'm proud of that. It's hard to stay any place over 3 years in the National Football League coaching, to be honest with you. And I was 16 years with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the rest of the time I had to get out of Dodge before they threw me out. But Katie, thank you for that introduction. Those interceptions, hell, they only threw the ball about 20 times a game when I played. If I was playing today, man, I'd probably have about 160. On the interception, one thing I've always done when I was coaching actively, I always wanted to establish my credibility with my players. And I was not bashful about telling them what I'd done, how many games, particularly the consecutive games that I played. 180 pounds, that's the only thing I've ever bragged about in my life. And that was 172 straight games. It stood as a record in the National Football League for any position until about, I think, 8 years ago, some guy broke it from Tampa Bay, but he was playing a slot corner. But our relationship with Katie is one of need always. She's dealt with the LeBeau family several times over the years. She's a remarkable young lady. And I know the Hall of Fame took a step in the right direction when they brought her in full time. I have never, ever, the staff here is totally amazing. And really, the way they treat us, the honored inductees, and it's us that should be treating them, believe me. I've never come up with a question for her or asked for help from her that it wasn't taken care of like that. It's amazing, the staff here and what they do, and she's indicative of that. And I think she should have one more round of applause. And that's for her and all her associates who are equally very conscientious. I have family in East Canton. I I have family in Alliance, so I'm no stranger to this part of the state. As I was growing up, it was a happening for us to come from Central Ohio. London is a little town between Columbus and Springfield, but we would come up for a summer picnic, family reunion, if you will. And in those days, without, access to a lot of roads, without really, we didn't have a telephone until I was a junior in high school. You just didn't see people in your family. And we would always gather up here in East Canton, really. And so I've been up here and messed around quite a bit. The reason that I'm particularly proud to be here is I know this is a room full of either born and bred Ohioans or transplanted Ohioans. And I think what you have done here, I'm honored to be part of this. I'm told by Katie this is the oldest function of this sort that the Hall of Fame does. And you are all to be commended for keeping traditions such as this alive and very viable. What a turnout. It's great. So give yourself a hand, man. A little bit about my background. I was born in London, Ohio. That's a town of about, when I was there, 7,000, maybe 7,500. This county seat, though. And there's probably 10,000 now. I hate to admit it, but it's been 65 years, so it's going to grow a little bit. But when I grew up loving football, it's a football town. Everybody in town admired the football coach. Every young boy who played football wanted to be like his football coach. Mine was Jim Bowles. And I had two professions that I considered for life. One was coaching football, or coaching any sport, and the other was going to be accounting. My dad was an accountant. I had a cousin who was like a brother, was an accountant. And I was pretty good at math, and I liked to solve problems and have them come out right. And those were the two choices that I was thinking about for my life choice. And it turned out that I played football until I was 35 years old. Played it. So when it's come time to get a job, a real job, people say, well, what's your background? I said, well, I've been playing for the Detroit Lions for 14 years. Well, what's your business experience? I said, I've been playing for the Detroit Lions. So, the business world, they didn't think that amounted to much. And all the coaching world, they all said, well, how much have you coached? I've been playing for the Detroit Lions. I had a lot of on-the-job training. But it turned out that I got on with the Philadelphia Eagles was my first job. Mike McCormick, who was a great Cleveland Brown. I got chuckled that they were talking about Marion Motley's foundation, which is another great thing that you guys keep going. My high school coach took a bunch of his high school players up to a Cleveland Brown training camp in the early 50s. And that was when they had Motley and Otto Graham and Luke Rosa. And I mean, I've been a Cleveland Brown fan forever. In those days, you didn't have to worry about freeways, interstates. You just got on Route 42, man, and went north. It was going to take you eventually up in this area of the field. Things were different in the early 50s in the National Football League. For instance, when I think we were in Oberlin College is where we had our training camp. Paul Brown was my coach. And there were 30 made the squad. Today, I think there are 57 or 8 with 13 or 14 on the practice squad. We had 31, and 5 of them were defensive backs. And there were 12 teams in the league. So in the final analysis, there were really 60 guys in the world that were making a living playing defensive back in the National Football League. And as Katie pointed out, it was the last Tuesday of training camp. Training camp in those days was over 2 months, 2.5 months in training camp. Now they go for 2 weeks. It's a little different. We were in pads by the second day, and twice a day thumping the leather. I don't know how long they go now, but I don't think they ever hit contact. That's why we don't know what the hell any team's got until they play 4 or 5 games in a regular season. They don't play in the preseason, they don't play in training camp. But I understand, there's 17 games. You can only play so many football games, especially at that level. But we went up there, and the way it went, they would cut every Tuesday. And I went to the last week, and you would go in and you got a letter, and it either said report to practice or thanks for your efforts in Highway 42's first left down here. For money, I think you got about $35 a week for, I don't know, needles and thread if you ripped your clothes. I don't know what it was for. You got no money until you made the team and played the first game. So, like I said, 31 people. You didn't have to worry about special teams, which was my first job in the National Football League, was coaching special teams. And it was an entry-level position at that time, which is where I had to start. And I was very happy to have it. And the special teams part of the thing was, well, let's put it this way. I don't care if I ever see another kick as long as I live. All you do is sit there and grind a film on. But with 31-man squad, you had a lot of on-the-job playing because there weren't a lot of guys who come in and be on the punt team, be on the punt return team, be on the kickoff team. You were the whole team, all 31 of you. So you played every snap of defense. You played every kickoff, every kickoff return. A guy like myself, who was smaller and quick, I played on everything except the field goal kicking team. They didn't need me in that, and I helped for that. I was a holder on that. But specialists had to play a position. When I said Lou Groza made me think of it, he's one of the greatest kickers ever. My 14 years for Detroit, Yale Larry he may be the best punter I've ever seen to this day. Yale is in the Hall of Fame as a safety from Detroit. And this might be a good chance to brag. And that group in my defensive backfield, the guys that I played with in Detroit, was Yale Larry, Night Train Lane, Jack Christensen, Lem Barney, let's don't leave out Dick LeBeau. 5 guys in that era that all played for the Detroit Lions. I'm proud of that, really. I think LeBeau's got the most interception of any of them in a Detroit Lion uniform. Dick Lane is maybe 3rd all time in interception, and he was something else. And Lem Barney. You know what? Excuse me if I skip around a little bit. I got to talk about what I'm thinking about it because in 30 seconds I won't remember what it was. See, I already forgot what I was going to say. If these guys, trust me, if these guys that I'm talking about now, and I they were playing today, they'd be wonderful stars. The athletes of yesterday could play and compete and excel in today's game. Could they all do it? No, the game's different. Guys have gotten bigger. Guys have gotten faster. They've gotten stronger. But these guys that end up here, and I'm not really, truthfully, not putting myself in there. I'm not quite sure how I got here. But they would play with any of these guys today. Lem Barney would be the most fantastic interceptor that you have ever seen. Night Train Lane made him rewrite the rule book for how a defensive back could tackle and how hard he could hit. And if he was playing tomorrow, they'd be rewriting the book just like they did. Yale Larry was probably the best punter that I ever saw. We were playing in Dallas, and Yale kicked. The ball was snapped from about our 8-yard line. The punter is 15 yards deep. So by the time he kicked it, he takes about 3 yards to hit the ball. He was around our goal line when he kicked the ball. And the ball was a windy day, I'll give you that. But the ball went 20 yards over the return safety's head. It hit on about the 15-yard line and took a hard bounce. And the end bleachers in the Dallas Fairgrounds is where we played, stadium. They're probably 7 yards from the back line of the end zone. The ball hit, bounced twice, and jumped up into the first row. A guy in the first row caught it. I had never seen anybody kick a football like that. We had a practice field over here and a practice field over here, and there was like, I don't know, 50-foot trees in between the two of them. Yale would get ready for season, punt the ball over those trees. So those kind of athletes, they'd still be able to play, without a doubt. I was lucky. I was going to be a coach or an accountant. And kind of hard to marry those two occupations. I made my decision to be a coach because I didn't want to spend the rest of my life wearing a necktie to work. True. But I got to be exposed in college. My coach, well, in high school, I already mentioned him. He was the town idol, Jim Bolas. In college, I played for Woody Hayes. Woody is a very, very misunderstood man. A lot of people that have written a lot of things about Woody Hayes never knew him, never knew the man, didn't know what all he did, the good that he did, the altruistic interest that he had. He was as fine an American as you would ever hope to meet. And Woody had one fault that some of us have. He had a temper, and he'd be the first one to admit it. And it ended up getting him in trouble. And in some professions, you're more in the public eye than others. And I always, whenever I speak, try to extol the virtues of a man. Woody Hayes. Woody Hayes was in World War II. He was an enlisted man that rose to the rank of captain. I think there were 3 men that did that in the history of World War II, soldiers and sailors. He was in the Navy. He had his own ship. And when he came out of that, he became a football coach. And he taught me one thing. You got to do what you know. And he worked on a system, and the system worked. And he didn't leave it. And he even had plenty of critics. They call it, Woody's offense was 3 yards in a cloud of dust. And he drafted for that. He got tough guys. I remember my first team meeting when I went to Columbus, Ohio. I came from London, I told you. I was 6 foot, and at that time weighed about 178, maybe 180. I never got any bigger than 183. But in my high school league, I was as big as any of them. There were a few linemen that were bigger, but not many. And when I went to Ohio State, of course, it was every kid. They were from Worcester, and they were from Cincinnati, and they were from Cleveland. And I've never seen so many 6'4", 285-pound guys in my life, man. I said, the hell am I doing over here? And we had a limited number of schools that we could play in our division. And Woody recruited these guys that were big and strong, and he conditioned the heck out of us, and we just wear you down. That's the way we played. We were taking the ball. The game was different. You had two ends, they were here. You had three backs, a fullback, two halfbacks, and a quarterback. There weren't any flankers, there weren't any motions, there weren't any slots, none of that existed. And we just pounded and hammered. And I guess it wasn't too pretty, but it sure did work. And it taught me one thing. Understand what you're doing and what you want to do, and know the pluses and minuses. And this is what he did, and he stayed with it through all the criticism. He started in high school, went to Denison, I think, and then he went to Miami of Ohio and then to Ohio State. He won every place he went. And he would always, his answer to the 3 yards in a cloud of dust, it was always somewhere in that cloud of dust, there's an Ohio State halfback running 75 yards for a touchdown. We would break plays, big plays, but it was always in about the 5 or 6 minutes to go in the game where the other team had been just completely worn down. All right, let him sleep, man. That's okay. I don't know what I'm going to say next anyhow, man. You're not missing nothing. Don't worry about it. That's my biggest critic. Like I said, that Woody taught me to know what you're talking about and know your strengths and your weaknesses. Paul Brown, I was with him for 6 weeks, got to see how he operated. I played in all-star games for Vince Lombardi. My second defensive coordinator at the Detroit Lions was Don Shula. Don Shula is an Ohio guy. I think he's from Painesville. He and Carl Tassett, both of them, played in the NFL, went to John Carroll. So I'm a Buckeye, man. I'm one of you guys. And that's why I'm really thrilled to be here. I'm honored to be here. I salute you for what you do. And I'll try to make it a little more interesting as we go along when I'm answering your questions. But something about those guys that I noticed was Lombardi, Shula, Paul Brown. They were totally different. Woody, personality guys, some quick-tempered, some you couldn't hardly hear them speak, but they all had something that was particularly arresting about their personality. And they knew what they were doing, and when they talked about what they were doing, they were accurate. So I put that down in the back of my little notebook that I kept in my head because I wanted to be a coach all these years that I was playing. And I would always relate to myself saying, I don't think I would talk to my players like that. Or I would say that, geez, that was pretty good the way he handled that and the way he taught that. Because a coach is nothing but a teacher. And what I found about that part of it, I coached until I was 80 years old. And in Pittsburgh at 70, my kids started calling me Coach Dad. They did. And they'll call me that when I see them now. We get together every now and then. And some people, I suppose, would have been upset at that. I'm proud of it, man. But I found out this. Athletes want to get better. Athletes want to compete. They don't want to go go out there in front of people that are in the stands and not play well. They don't want to have bad plays. They want to win. And we've all got a little bit of showbiz in us where we wouldn't really want to go out in front of everybody. We all do. But I found that if you could help this young man play better, and if what you told him improved him, it didn't matter how old you were. He didn't care how old were you telling him the right thing. So what I try to always be telling my players is something that I knew daggone good and well, it worked, because I had done the research on it. And I had many times gone off the diving board into an empty swimming pool. It happens. You're not going to create anything new if you don't step a little bit over the accepted parameters. Oh, you do this and you do that. Well, maybe if we do this, it work a little bit better. And that's how things evolve, I think. But these kids that I coached, all you had to do was, they could see they were getting better, because I'd make them sit down and look at the film with me. And I'd say, see this? You're not doing that anymore. You're doing this, and it's helping you. And I never had a problem communicating with my kids. And I coached them like they were my kids. And so to me, it was only right when they called me Coach Dad. And I always said back to them, well, the truth of the matter is, you could call me Coach Granddad, and it would be more appropriate. Twice as old as you and older than your dad. But that's one thing that I would say probably my legacy, if you will, is the zone blitz. Coach LeBeau came up with the zone blitz. Me now, at last count, there was 58 other guys that said they came up with it. Those people who were around the National Football League and through the evolution of the zone blitz, they know that we were the first ones to do it. And I was fortunate to be working for a guy by the name of Sam Weiss, who was a very, very far-reaching, futuristic coach. He was one of the first guys to know huddle and hurry huddle and get up the ball and work all the problems out that's involved in that. And so when I came to him with the proposition, Coach, I was his defensive coordinator, so I had to run stuff through him, at least get the okay. I said, here's what I'm thinking about doing. I'm going to rush this little guy over here, this safety, and with these two little linebackers over there, and I'm going to take these two 300-pound defensive linemen, and I'm going to drop them off over there in space. And most coaches in that scenario would say, well, you're out of your mind, man. You're going to take our big, strong guys and drop them and rush the little guys? I said, yeah, well, it's a little bit like playing checkers. When you get the one-man advantage, all you got to do is trade off, and you're in the crown club pretty soon. And that's how I started. And Sam said, go ahead. And I did it in preseason games first. And I knew that if it blew up too many times, that I wouldn't be able to do it too often. And it so happened that our first game was an exhibition game I was coaching for the Bengals. And I sent Fulcher, who was our strong safety, and I trapped with Ray Griffin, who's a Buckeye, our corner. And quarterback saw the safety coming, and he just knew the hot read was out there, and he threw it right out to Griffin. Griffin intercepted and ran back 45 yards for a touchdown. I said, hey, we may be on the right track here. After a couple of years of doing it, I just kind of spoon-fed it in there. Boomer Sison was our quarterback down there, and Marino, we were playing Miami. And quarterbacks, they're in a different thing. After the game, they always get together and talk. They're all buddies. And it was a close game. Of course, Marino did his thing, went down, beat us, kicked the field goal with about a minute to go in the game, and beat us by 3 points. But the score was like 17-14. And we defended them well. And Boomer said to him, Danny said, how'd you do with those zone blitzes? And Marino's, this all came back to me through Boomer. And he said, Marino said, Well, they told me in the meeting before we went on the practice field what to look for. And in the practice field, it was just like what they said, and I knew what to look for. He said after 4 plays in the ball game, I knew this wasn't worth a damn. He said, I'm just going to look for my guy and throw it to my guy, which is what you're looking for if you're a defensive coach. You don't want the quarterback to know where you're going to be before they snap the ball. Because I promise you this, at any level, but doubly true in the National Football League, if that quarterback knows where you're going, he's going to hurt you. And he's going to complete the ball. But if he's got to read that and then adjust it as the ball snaps, well, he's going to make some mistakes. And when the line makes mistakes with the pickup, then he's going to get hit. And that's going to affect him more than not quite reading you where you started from. So that was the success of the zone blitz. I owe it really all to great players. And I drew up a lot of defenses, believe me. And when I had Troy Polamalu, anything I drew up worked, believe me. Most of the time, with those guys that I had in Pittsburgh, I was there 16 years. We went to 4 Super Bowls there and won 2. I had the greatest group of defensive players you'd ever want to see. I always had linebackers. I had Woodley and Harrison at the end, and I had Lloyd and Kevin Green. I saw him on that thing up there before that. And together, those 4 guys have made more sacks than anybody that's worn the Pittsburgh Steelers uniform. So first thing I had to learn was to stay the hell out of their way and let them go. And they were going to make me look pretty smart. But I had some other stories, but I think I'd rather talk about something that any of you might be interested in. And so if you got those microphones, let's do the question and answer here.
You obviously came up with the idea of the blitz. Who named it?
The zone blitz?
Yeah.
I named it. They called it Blitzburg over in Pittsburgh, but we were doing it 8 years before we ran it over there. Now, I worked for a guy by the name of Bill Cowher over there. And if you've ever seen him, he's on TV now, you know, telecasting. He smiles every now and then. But if you saw him when he was coaching, remember, he's the guy that picked up the umpire's flag that he threw and stuffed it down in his pocket. Oh, he was a lot of fun to work with. But that was my boss, so I had been, my services were tendered at Pittsburgh, or at Cincinnati. It was another team that said, we don't need you, but they brought me back later on. They said, we need you now. But then they said, we don't need you, but this is the life of a football coach, trust me. When I went over there, Dom Capers, who's still coaching, he's, what do they call him? Yeah, he's working for Carolina right now, actually. He's an advisor, in an advisory capacity, which I never did have too much interest in, but it still pays pretty damn. I'm not going to second guess Dom. But he wanted to do it right away. Dom had played against it. He was coaching in New Orleans, and we shredded him over in Cincinnati one day with it. Bill called it junk defense. LeBeau with a junk defense. So I knew if we were going to zone blitz, it better damn well be a good one, and it better get home, because we weren't doing it again. And I just kept watching the film, and it was, I think, the second game of the year. We were playing the Cowboys in Pittsburgh, and I said, Dom, I think this is the week that Sam will get home, and I don't think they can block it with what they're doing. And we got 3 sacks off it, and an interception on one ball they got away. So on Monday, we were meeting Monday, and Bill was talking to Dom, and he said, is that one of LeBeau's defenses? Yeah. He said, well, why the hell didn't you get it in here sooner than this? I said, well, we just didn't have the right situation. But it took over the defense, and it became Blitzburg. But again, it was because of the players that were doing it, and it fit them. And I will say this in all seriousness, the bunch that I had that followed them, with Troy, with Clark, with Harrison and Woodley, with Ferrier, with Larry Foote, those guys were smart and agile, and they could go anywhere. And our linemen, Kiesel, Smith, Casey Hampton, they were athletic, man, and they could do about anything the old coach could draw up. Believe me, I stayed up in the old castle drawing pretty late at night for them, and it always worked out. And it popularized. I'll put it this way: I go to a high school game every now and then. I'll be looking. They'll be running zone blitzes, man. Makes me feel pretty good, to be honest with you.
As a lifelong,
But I named it.
as a lifelong Pittsburgh Steeler fan and a resident of Pittsburgh my whole life, I'd like to thank you for being such a fantastic coach for us for so many years.
Well,
And it's a testament to you as a coach that at your induction ceremony, which I attended, by the way, that the whole Pittsburgh Steeler team was there.
oh yeah, I couldn't look at them or I would have teared up in a minute, but they were all sitting right back there, right there all together. And I saw Troy with all of his hair and all them table tiles. I said,
Well, I was one of them.
they can't.
And my question to you is, what was it like to coach Troy Polamalu?
Well, you guys don't have 2 months in another year. I could tell you all about it. But I will say this about those guys coming. I like to tell this story. Coach Tomlin was the head coach then, and the Rooney family, they still on the team. So when I got back after the induction ceremony, I thanked him. I said, that's tremendous. I said, I'm so grateful that you would allow the team, they bust the whole big team. Training camp was about an hour and 45 minutes. They shut down camp, and that's giving the whole league a day of an advantage on you. And I said, it was humbling to me to look out there and see you all, and I just can't tell you how grateful I am. And Mike just looked at me and he said, Dick, he said, I would have had an absolute uprising if I didn't let him go. He said, I had 5 players come to me and they said, we're going to see LeBeau go in, with or without you. So that reflects back to what I was talking about earlier about how you treat people you're working with. And I was instructing these guys, but I treat them like they were my kids. And I jumped in a boat with them. If I made a mistake, I didn't try to cover that up. I said, man, I was totally wrong on that. And you got to follow me anyhow, because every group's got to have a leader. And what I say, you got to do. But I'm going to tell you right now, it ain't always going to be right, but it's going to be what I think is right. And the next one I call is going to be the one I think is even more right. And like I say, as long as you ain't right, as long as you ain't wrong all the time, they'll follow you. You might lose them though if you don't get it right. Go ahead. What was your last question? What is it like to coach Troy? A dream. You get a player like that once in a generation. I'd have people come up to me every day in Pittsburgh, every day, and they'd say some very nice things. And they'd say, Coach, I bet you can't guess who my favorite player is. I said, well, I bet I can. I'd say, Troy Polamalu. How'd you know that, Coach? I said, because you're the 5,268 person asked me that question. Every Friday, which is the only day that a player's got any time to breathe, he gets to go home, play 6 or 7 holes of golf if he wants to, take his wife to dinner if he wants to. Troy would go by the Children's Hospital every Friday on his way home. he had a group of kids in there that loved and worshiped him, and he made their life worthwhile, and he did it unselfishly every week. He was, and not that there aren't other players that do that, there are, but he was, well, hell, he's still on TV selling hair tonic. He's a pretty popular guy.
Dick,
Yeah.
Dick, did Woody Hayes come to your home to recruit you by way of your mother?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I don't know if anybody that he wanted to sign, I don't know if the stories of Woody's recruiting are legendary. One family, not mine, he always knocked on the front door. One family, they came home one time, I think they'd been shopping, and they saw Woody's car parked in the driveway. They went in, Woody was sitting at the kitchen table eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Come on in! He was a great recruiter. Yeah, he was.
Trying to turn this mic. Hello?
Hi.
All right. Who was the best receiver that you played against?
Paul Warfield. Paul's a great guy. He's had some health problems now, but I think he's doing reasonably well. He's a Buckeye, baby. Paul and I were in the same wrestling class together, and I was coming back to get my degree, and he was just a freshman from up these parts, and we've been friends ever since. I played against so many great receivers. I hesitate to name one, but I've been asked that question so many times. I said, well, I'm saying Paul, if someone asks me now, because he made me change. So, you know, when I said I gathered all my data and I researched it, and if it didn't work for me, I wasn't going to teach it. Well, he made me scrap more of my, hey, this works, and throw it in the wastebasket than anybody I played against. And beyond that, he's one perfect human being. He was a glider. Like Bob Hayes won the Olympic 100-meter dash. Then he went to Dallas, and we played Dallas. The only playoff game we got to play in because we didn't even have them until my last couple of years of playing, and we qualified my next to last year of playing. And we played Dallas. They beat us 5-0. We had a pretty good defense. Our offense didn't score too much, but it was 5-0 that they beat us. But I watched Bobby Hayes all day, but I looked at all the video on this guy, and I said, man, I'll be honest with you, I was a little intimidated. I'm just from a little agrarian county right up the road here in London, Ohio, and there weren't too many fastest men in the world that you could practice against, to be honest with you. And so this guy can fly. Well, when I watched close enough, he was powerful. And Bob probably weighed 205. He was about 5'11", and he was stocky. But when he ran, the dirt flew up. It was before AstroTurf, that helped. The dirt flew up behind him like one of those hydro racing boats that thrown up the rooster tail. You could just tell, this guy's opened up. He's flying. I'm going to get the hell out of here. And that's all I did. I just watched the scene. If I didn't see the dirt fly up, I was ready to jump on him on all the short stuff. And but Warfield was a glider. And you would think he wasn't running. But if you took your eye off of him, if he was where that stanchion is right there, when you were looking, and you took your eye off him, he was over there someplace. And as a DB, it's all position and angles. And you gotta watch the guy to know where your angles are. And Paul, you could never gain it back once you lost it. But I thought for a while, I was reading the near back, and whether he took a wide flare or a short flare, then the outside guy was gonna, if it was tight, he was gonna work out. If he was wide, he was gonna work in. And I played a couple games, I was doing pretty good. And then I drew Warfield one Sunday. Whew, that was a long Sunday. And the first thing I said was, Dick, get your eyes on Warfield and don't get off of him, baby. And he was the best. Yeah.
You spoke a little bit.
Pardon me?
You spoke a little bit about teaching your boys. Where do you draw inspiration, or where did you draw inspiration for inspiring them?
For inspiring players, I treated them like my sons, and I never hollered at them. If I hollered, they knew something was up. It wasn't just an everyday occasion. I wanted it to mean something, that I was upset if I hollered. But invariably, if I ever had words with a player, before he left that locker room that night, I walked over and had a long talk with him about why it happened and explained to him that I still love him. I just want him not to make those mistakes. And I treated him like I treated my own children that my wife raised, really, because I was always over coaching someplace. She did a wonderful job, I might add. I never once thought about, well, I'm going to say this, say that. Most of the time, when we get in a situation with our championship teams, when Ben Roethlisberger would score in the fourth quarter, get a field goal lead or a point lead or a touchdown lead, and we'd have to go out there and get the other team off the field, either to protect a 3, 4, 7-point lead, and the game was on the line, I might start walking over the sideline while a extra point team was out there and say, now let's see, Coach, what do you want to say here now? And then just about then time, those of you, there's some Pittsburgh people here, now Renegade would start rocking up there on me, and then terrible times would start twirling around up there. I'd say, boss, don't you say one damn word. Just, I look at my guys' eyes and I see in their eyes they were ready to go. I say, I ain't saying nothing. I might say the wrong thing. I'm gonna let them go. And I don't think anybody's gonna do anything against us. And you know, most of the time they didn't. Those guys closed the game out with the best of them. So I never thought about it. You know, when I was talking about deciding what you want to be in life, you got to look the plus and the minus. You got to see what you like, what you know, and then you got to get a background in that area so that when you're talking, you know what you're talking about. And that's what I focused on as a coach. I knew what I was going to say in whatever situation. One thing about coaching a long time, you're in every situation. And I didn't try to Hollywood anything up. I just tried to be Dick LeBeau. You know, your players know that. The first thing they can spot's a phony. And if you're up there trying to be somebody, if I was trying to be Woody Hayes, they would turn me off in 10 seconds. But I was old stumbling, bumbling Dick LeBeau when I said, well, you might consider this might be a little better than getting your ass burnt every see, we made it till 1 o'clock. Last question.
Dick,
Yes,
this thing works.
that's all right, I can hear you.
Okay, first of all, I'm glad you looked at that and found out there was another road other than 42. It went to Pittsburgh, and we're sure glad you came there. And you talked about the players you had and the different things, the game's changed. What was the biggest change that you've seen over the years in the defensive and secondary?
In the secondary, hell, you can't do anything. All I ever said about rules changes was everybody's got to play by it. And rather than worry about it, when they change the rules, you get a copy of them every year. And I just sat down and studied them, and I said, what can I do to give my guys the advantage? There ain't no sense hollering about it. This is the game that we're going to play. But in terms of defensive back, you have to adjust some things that really worked well for me that were no longer legal to do. I'll tell you one story about the people in Pittsburgh, how they treat me and how much I love, especially Western Pennsylvania. But Dick Shafrath was a teammate of mine at Ohio State. He's from Worcester. He went to Worcester. He grew up on a farm. And Dick went on after he played 14 or 15 years with the Browns. He became a representative or a senator in the Ohio House. And I think he served 4 terms. And he called me up when I was over Pittsburgh, and we were in our glory days, our good teams. And he said, Dick, I'm gonna come over and watch football practice. I said, come over, man. And I gave him the directions, got him in a hotel that was literally 2 blocks from our practice facility. And he came over and he's laughing. Dick always had a big smile. And he said, U-S-O-B, LeBeau, U-S-O-B. He said, I've never been so frustrated in my life. I said, well, what's wrong, Dick? He said, well, he gave me good directions. He said, I was having a little bit of trouble finding the place. So I was circling around here, and a cop pulls me over, and he says, you look like you could be having trouble. Dick said, yes, sir, I am. He said, I'm going over to the Steelers practice facility and watch my buddy Dick LeBeau work and watch the Steelers practice. Oh, he said, you going to see LeBeau? He said, yeah. And he said, well, get right behind me, and he flipped his bubble gum on. He gave him a police escort all the way to the practice field. Shaffer said, I was in the House of Representatives for 12 years, never had a police escort. Came to Pittsburgh in the church. I'm really proud of you.